What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Shockwave Porter here. Welcome back to a brand new video. And today we got ourselves a new chapter of My Hero Academia, chapter 395, where we see the end of the battle with Toga and Uraraka's battle. So apparently, it's gotten very dramatic right now. As far as I know, this is going to be a sad one because the title says Himiko Toga dies to save Ochako. So apparently, I don't know how she did die. So we're gonna find out for sure on this chapter. But before I do that, on today's video, before I proceed, make sure you guys do this and that too. Alright, so with that being said, let's get into the video. Let's see how this chapter goes.
Chapter 395 is here, and it is titled What Lies Beyond My Happiness. And get your napkins ready because, folks, this one is gonna be sad. Shout out to Rukusu and Dabi's pole dance for the information, and let's get into it. So Rukusu says the chapter begins with all the clones vanishing. We see that they were heading towards the Todoroki family, Ida, and Hawks. And that is exactly what we see on the first page, as we see massive crowds of the Twice clones disappearing and turning into dust. And on the page, we see Endeavor pretty much laying on top of his family, completely passed out, doing the most that he can possibly do in this moment, trying to protect them from all the Twice clones that were swarming around them. As we cut over to the city and we see all the Twice clones there disappearing, who were just about to attack Ida, as a hand starts vaporizing in front of him that was reaching towards him, trying to grab him. It's at this point where we see one of the clones had its knife pointed at Hawks, but it vanishes, and Hawks says Bubai Gawara was a really nice guy. Right, Himiko Toga? But it's not like Toga doesn't get to give Hawks a little bit of a parting gift, as we see that Toga slashes Hawks not only down his face, but also right down his collarbone and onto his chest and arms, which is probably going to leave a scar on the left side of Hawks' face, let alone on the left side of his body and his right arm. And on the page, we actually do see that Toga still looks really angry as her Twice clone facing Hawks, even as she's vanishing away, but she does start to tear up, likely because she wasn't able to finish the job, but it also probably has to do with Hawks' words here. A narration from Toga then begins, saying that her knife is something that allows her to become someone who she loves, so she shouldn't have held it with hate in her heart. We see Toga standing next to Ochako, who's lying on the ground, and she has her mask in her hand. Now, as Toga just kind of stands there naked as the rain falls, Ochako is unable to move, right? She's laying on the ground in a completely broken position. It almost looks like Yamcha, right? Like, she looks like she's obviously not well, as Toga sort of looks to the side and one of her hair buns unravels. Toga's panting and she starts to feel a lot of pain, but it's a consequence of using her quirk. She realizes that Ochako's also exhausted because she didn't release her awakened quirk until all the heroes were back on the ground, noting that Ochako really didn't want to let anyone get hurt. But as Toga thinks about this, she really starts to look at Ochako and realizes the state that she's in is just really not good. Ochako knows she's lost a lot of blood and cannot move a finger, and Toga looks around her and sees all the people who got her because of her, and at the same time, she remembers Ochako's sweet word, thinking to herself that she knows that Ochako's blood loss is her fault because she stabbed her. And it's here where Toga really starts to look around at the battlefield and even start to look up in the air at the helicopter that's recording the battle, thinking about everything that she's done up until this point. It's here where Ochako starts to really shiver pretty harshly on the page, likely because she's about to pass out due to blood loss. And this is where Toga tells Ochako that the League of Villains wanted to destroy everything, and what would rise after that would be a world where it's easier to live in. But she was so happy with what Ochako said that now she world without her to exist. And this is when we see that Toga takes a knife and actually gets really close to Ochako, with Ochako starting to get scared again, wondering what's happening here. And on the page, as we see all the different League of Villains members that Toga's become friends with over the course of the series, she kneels down next to Ochako and takes a bunch of her blood into her hands and kind of pulls it like you would take some water from the river and drinks it, transforming into Ochako for a very special purpose. Toga says, "My feelings are genuine, so I will give you all of my blood." And as she's saying this, Ochako is literally fading away, right? Like, if Toga doesn't do something here, Ochako is going to die. She's passing out completely far away from any sort of help or anything like that, so some help is very much needed here. Toga takes the blood-sucking syringe from her mask that she's had ever since the very beginning of the series, and she puts one end on Ochako and the other end on herself, or I guess her transformed into Ochako self, and when she puts a syringe in both of their arms, she starts a blood transfusion. Now, at this point, point, Ochako feels her body heating up, but she knows what's gonna happen if things keep continuing on like this. But the issue is again that Ochako can't really move at this point, and she doesn't really even have the strength to speak all that much. Toga says that Jin did the same thing in My Villain Academia, which isn't literally what she said, but it's a funny way to put that from Rukusu, because imagine if she was like, yeah, back during My Villain Academia, this is what Twice did to save me. But she says that this is what Twice did back in My Villain Academia, using a clone of her to perform a blood transfusion. Since she no longer has Twice's blood to make new clones, that's why she turned into Ochako herself, but this means that this is actually very dangerous because she doesn't have some secondary limitless supply of blood to just keep making clones from and give to Ochako, meaning she's actually putting her life on the line to save Ochako here. Ochako finally manages to get a word out telling Toga to stop, but Toga starts stitching up the wound in Ochako's stomach because she intends for Ochako to survive. It's here where Toga starts to get a little tired and lays down in front of Ochako, beginning to cry even more, and says that Ochako actually seems willing to keep allowing her to take her blood for her to drink, and she could very well have just acted like a hero and killed the crazy villain, but she decided to give help that wasn't asked for and save the one who hurt her friend. And because of this, Toga says that Ochako really is weird. Ochako replies that she's the weird one for doing this transfusion, but Toga says that she'll always live the way that she wants to, and that's why she won't let herself be arrested, even if it's on Ochako's terms. And as she says this, I think the reality really starts to sink in for Ochako because she starts crying as well, as Toga apologizes for stabbing Ochako and yelling at her, and she says that earlier Toya burned down the house that forced her to be normal, and that made her happy, but even though the house is gone, the wounds in her heart weren't. And she appreciates that Ochako recognized that Toga's pain was real, and she wasn't just some villain doing things because she was raw, bad, evil. For a moment, Toga sits up as she's holding onto Ochako's little All Might toy that was given to her by Deku, and this might actually even be a clone one from the Ochako costume that she currently has on from her clone form. As Toga sits up in front of Ochako and the two shed tears together, Toga says that even though it wasn't the easiest way, Ochako managed to touch Toga's heart, and that made her feel lighter inside. She says, "Thank you so much, Ochako-chan. I was so happy." And the blood continues to be transferred as Ochako continues to cry, shouting, "Himiko-chan!" as Toga finally lays down next to Ochako for the last time, saying goodbye with a smile on her face as tears continue to stream down her face, as in Toga's mind we see a vision of her letting a bird free out of her hands, with a narration of her saying that she drank people's blood with a mix of love and envy, but if she was loved back earlier, she could have also given her blood to many people, and if that happened, the world would be a slightly easier place for others to live in. And as the bird flies away into the sky, we see Toga looking up into the sky as she smiles and thinks, but still, I lived the way I wanted to and was a normal girl with the cutest smile in the whole world. And on the final page, we see Ochako and Toga both laying down on the battlefield as the blood transfusion completes and Toga passes away. So this is a very emotional chapter. Of course, Ochako is also passed out, and it doesn't seem like she's going to be rejoining the battle at any point. So the only two fights that are left in the My Hero Academia manga, bar of course the Aoyama versus Kunieda battle, I think that's that villain's name, or the battle between Sero and whoever they're fighting over in their area. The only two battles that we have left is All Might versus All for One, of course, and Deku versus Shigaraki. So the My Hero Academia manga is wrapping up towards its conclusion, and I really like this chapter. Of course, I had a lot of issues with the way that Horikoshi handled the whole situation with Bakugo. This felt like it was handled by almost a completely different author, right? This felt like it was handled so much better that I honestly had to like slow clap to myself in my room, just excited about like how well Horikoshi did this. Now, I already see that this chapter is very divisive online, with some people saying that they hated Toga's death, other people saying that they wanted her to be around, some people saying that this ruins her character. I don't know. I don't agree with any of that stuff. Usually I'm the person saying those things, so it's really interesting being on the other side of the I guess the fence in this situation. But what do you guys think in the comment section below? Please let me know. Do you think Toga should have died here? Do you think it's a bad decision from Horikoshi to have done that, or do you like the decision to kill Toga's character off, even if you think she maybe should have survived or could have been redeemed? Because it's a very sad decision to make, but it still makes sense for her character. Even the character herself said she wasn't going to allow herself to be arrested and go to prison, so this was really the only way that she can go out besides a life of being on the run, which is already what she's been dealing with in this series so far. So that is the end of Himiko Toga. Of course.
Okay. I really want to cry right now, but I can't because obviously I don't know what to say about this chapter. This is just heartbreaking for me. And even though she was a villain, she still had good in her. She had goodness inside her this entire time. She just had to feel it. And she's gone. I mean, there could have been hope for her to live. There could have been hope. But she decided to pass away. And then she said she refused to not to be put in jail. Even though some villains often go to jail for that after the stuff you made in the city and hurt people. I mean, you gotta suffer the consequence for that, Toga. I mean, you might change after you get out of jail, but as far as I know, I didn't expect you to die like that. I mean, that's just heartbreaking. I mean, one of the best chapters I ever seen right now is 395, and I gotta say, I'm gonna grade it right here, right now. I'll give it an A+ because Toga really wanted a friend very badly, even though she lost twice, which was kind of disappointing, but still. She actually made friends with Ochako, and Ochako really liked her very much, even though all the drama she put her in so many seasons. I think we all should say, guys, Himiko Toga, rest in peace. Even though you were really a monster, but there could have been good in you. I mean, you could have had a better life rather than death. That's what I would say. If I was Ochako's shoes, I probably would say that. But if I'm there laying on the ground and I feel exhausted, I probably would, did something to cheer her up. But, it is what it is. You just made one heck of a good chapter, Horikoshi. And I really appreciate that. Everyone loves this chapter. I love this chapter. And you're doing a very good job with these chapters. And so I can't wait to the end of this My Hero Academia, even though it's coming to an end. But, as far as that, it's a good show. Well, guys, that's it for today's video. I don't know if we're on break, but we might see some action that's going on between All Might and All For One. However, I hear some rumors about All Might not going to survive in the battle between All For One because he knows how powerful All For One is. So, I think All Might just dies. Spoiler alerts, he just might. I'm not sure. I don't know how the battle's going to end, but still. But as far as that, I do know Deku's going to win eventually, and he's probably going to save Shigaraki. If that's the case, then they're probably going to end up being injured in the same process. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, folks.